Well, it is official. Activision Blizzard has been purchased by Microsoft for $69 billion. $69 billion. Nice. Now, with the memes aside, there is some impact this might have upon the gaming community, so let's talk about it. The most obvious of these would, of course, be the fact there was a giant court case around this acquisition due to the fact that, it basically boils down to monopoly. Sony was not too happy that Microsoft is gobbling up all of these, but from my understanding, Sony is still the second largest gaming company in the world, which is still ahead of Microsoft and behind Tencent. Here's an article from the LA Times saying effectively the same thing, mentioning that Microsoft is the third largest gaming company in the world by revenue, which would in fact be behind Tencent and Sony in Japan. However, I think the argument behind the monopoly is not so much the revenue in which they are creating, but the games in which they have their hands on now. And with the acquisition of all of these games, Activision games, Blizzard games, and King games, that's going to make Xbox Game Pass pretty good. In fact, they say so as much. If you look right here, we're also beginning to work to make Activision, Blizzard, and King's much beloved library of games available in Game Pass and other platforms. So that is directly from Microsoft themselves. This is from the Xbox chief Phil Spencer when they were welcoming the Blizzard employees to Microsoft. They are already starting to state these games are coming to Game Pass. Sort of reminds me of the Star Wars acquisition by Disney, where they went and acquired an IP and put it into their streaming type of platform in order to increase the monthly sales of that. It seems like it's somewhat of a similar play. They go out, they acquire a big chunk of IP with a lot of games in there. They slide it in their Game Pass and they start selling more monthly subscriptions. I'm not a big hater of this as much as I was with maybe Disney acquiring Star Wars for me felt a little bit worse than Microsoft acquiring Activision Blizzard, strictly because Game Pass is actually pretty good. I've owned Game Pass. I don't own it now, but I have in the past, and I've never begrudged the money I spend on Game Pass. There's a lot of good games in there. But I think it really all comes down to Call of Duty. Most people in the conversation seem to bring up Call of Duty continually, aka Call of Duty is too big of an IP, and I think Sony in particular was feeling a little bit scared that Call of Duty was going to be locked behind only the Xbox or the Xbox Game Pass, sort of pushing Sony out of the market for Call of Duty, which is not what is planned. They have actually signed an agreement to keep a 10-year deal to keep Call of Duty on the PlayStation. After that 10 years, however, well, it's a crapshoot because they said they reserve the right to be able to make Activision Blizzard franchise exclusives to the Xbox platform going forward. So in 10 years, maybe. One thing's for sure, though, is the last few years, Microsoft has been showing a lot more interest in building out the gaming side of things. We had all the gaming leaks that we addressed earlier with the largest leak in gaming history that you can see in that previous video, but also Microsoft acquired Bethesda for $7.5 billion just within the last 2 years. This is back in 2021. And even back then, they gave them a company's first-party Xbox game studio total of 23 as opposed to 13 with PlayStation at the time. So you can start to see why Sony was starting to feel the screws put them just a little bit. So how are the employees of the company feeling about this? Well, it seems like mostly positive from everything I've been seeing. This has partly to do with the fact that Microsoft seems somewhat open to unions. For instance, here's an article talking about the U.S. Tech Union praises completion of Microsoft Activision's Blizzard acquisition, says it represents a milestone for improving labor in gaming. The president of the Communication Workers of America says it is a new day for workers at Activision Blizzard. He goes over some of the past history of Blizzard, which has been pretty sketchy, and talks about how now there's a 60-day waiting period before those Blizzard employees are allowed to free to start talking about unionizing and discussing labor organization. And this would be because Microsoft signed a neutrality agreement in 2022 agreeing to not interfere with any unionizations attempts. Same sentiment seems to be mirrored, at least across the Twitter accounts I'm following for Blizzard. For instance, Adam Fletcher, one of the most notable within the Diablo 4 community here, seems to be fairly positive about going back to work for Microsoft, retweeting things about the same CMA decision that I read to you guys earlier, more repost here, etc. So it seems like the courts approved it, the employees are fine with it, Game Pass will be getting probably some bangers coming, and there should be 10 years of non-exclusive Call of Duty. After that, who knows? Is this going to affect Diablo 4 is probably a question you're wondering. Well, it's a new parent umbrella company. I doubt it automatically changes the game. However, if we're lucky, we might see Diablo 4 go on the Game Pass. We know it's already going to Steam, but Game Pass could be pretty cool as well. I think it would be a game that would fit Game Pass. You pay a little bit of a monthly subscription, you get a handful of decent games, one of which would be Diablo, would probably be a W for Game Pass. In other Diablo 4 news, this one's actually pretty funny. Diablo on the official Twitter ended up deleting the video they posted, not only because it was mathematically incorrect. In fact, if you look right here, here's our boy Rax on Reddit breaking down the why 40% of 1,000 is not 40, but in fact 400. But they also had it backwards, showing that the quality of life improvements for the dungeon were before and after, and they got them swapsies, and then they showed two horses going the exact same speed and said, hey, take a look, we've improved the speed of the horses. It was a memeable trailer that has since been deleted. I think he puts it best himself.
So everything here is wrong.
Now, there's some interesting news in relation to Diablo 4 and BlizzCon. So this here on Twitter is Joe Shelley says, Asmongold, saw your question. Make sure to tune into BlizzCon. And he says, thank you. What question was that? It was, this one is the context. Are there plans for making the Necromancer Malignant Heart where it casts for you to be part of the core game? This is in reference to basically my favorite heart from Season 1 that would make your corpse casts and curses, etc., automatic. Now, he says, tune into BlizzCon. This was a Season 1 mechanic, so maybe we're going to see stacking season mechanics coming to the Eternal realm. We don't know, but there is supposed to be some announcements on BlizzCon. Now, if you didn't know, I myself will actually be at BlizzCon as well as TwitchCon in just 7 days. So if you're going to be at either of those and you see long red hair, feel free to come up and say hi. I am rather looking forward to kind of getting out of Alaska and checking out some of these conventions. What's actually interesting about this is the first BlizzCon, to my understanding, that have not fully sold out. In fact, you can still purchase your tickets right now. And look at these prices, $299, $799 for the full Portal Pass, but it's $300 to get yourself into the main door, which is, I mean, it's pretty expensive. I can see why they didn't all sell. To be fair, I guess you get some other stuff with it. You get a backpack, etc. with it, but still $300 and $800 is kind of a lot for a ticket. Now, the dates for this are November 3rd and 4th, which coincides exactly with the release of Warcraft Rumble. So if you did not know, November 3rd, there is a new Warcraft game. It is a mobile game going to iOS and the Play Store, which is in the Warcraft universe. Effectively, it's minis, a lot like Clash Royale. I actually play tested this a little bit. I thought it was all right. If you like Clash Royale, you'll probably like this game. It is a mobile game, however, and I know most of the audience watching this video are probably PC gamers. And if you're somebody who doesn't participate in mobile games at all, you're probably just not going to like this one. But if you are at all a fan of like the Supercell style games, the Clash Royale, you drop like a little Warcraft character that runs across the screen to kind of kill their Warcraft character and then destroy their base at the end, maybe you might like this one. Either way, I guarantee there's going to be stuff related to Warcraft Rumble at BlizzCon. It releases it the same day as BlizzCon, so it would make sense. What's kind of interesting, too, we didn't cover earlier when talking about this, is with the acquisition of Activision Blizzard, Bobby Kotick is actually going to be leaving the company. So at the end of 2023, which is coming up here pretty soon, we are going to be losing Bobby Boy. And that's pretty much about it for Diablo news today. It's kind of a mixed grab bag of a little bit of funny bits. Had to delete their Twitter video because math is math, as well as Microsoft, Activision, Blizzard purchased for $69 billion. Love you all. See you on the next video and have a wonderful day.